What would you do if you discovered your mom was being conned out of her life savings by a fake millionaire on Tinder? And what if you were the only person who could save her? Have you ever seen someone you love fall for someone who seemed too good to be true? Have you ever had to choose between respecting someone's choices and protecting them from complete disaster? Maybe you watched a parent, a friend, or a family member get swept up in what looked like the perfect romance, but something deep in your gut told you it was all wrong? Today I'm sharing the most heartbreaking and ultimately inspiring story you've ever heard, one that will completely change how you think about online dating, family protection, and what it means to truly love someone enough to risk breaking their heart to save their life. This is the story of Monica Evans, a 54-year-old widow and devoted mother who thought she'd found her second chance at love with a charming entrepreneur named Elias Lark. But it's also the story of her brilliant college-age daughter, Tessa, who uncovered a web of lies so complex and devastating that it took international law enforcement to bring the truth to light. But here's the question that will keep you watching until the very end. How do you tell someone their perfect love story is actually their worst nightmare? How do you destroy someone's happiness to save their future? If you've ever had to watch a parent navigate dating after loss, or if you believe that sometimes love means saying the hardest things, hit that like button right now, because this story will show you why family protection matters more than keeping the peace. Let me take you to a cozy home in Oregon, where Monica Evans was learning to rebuild her life after losing everything that mattered most. 3 years earlier, Monica's husband of 26 years had died suddenly from a heart attack, leaving her and their daughter Tessa to navigate a world that felt completely foreign. Monica had been a devoted wife and mother, the kind of woman who always put everyone else's needs before her own, who found her identity in caring for the people she loved. For 3 years, she threw herself into two things: her job as a community college instructor teaching English composition and making sure Tessa had everything she needed to succeed in college. Monica lived for their weekend phone calls, for Tessa's visits home, for the pride she felt watching her daughter excel in her studies. But late at night, when the grading was done and the house was quiet, Monica felt an ache that seemed to grow deeper with each passing month. It wasn't just grief anymore, it was loneliness. The kind of bone-deep loneliness that comes from having no one to share the small moments with, no one to laugh with over morning coffee, no one to hold your hand during scary movies. She was only 54, still vibrant and full of life, but she felt invisible in a world that seemed designed for couples. Her married friends tried to include her, but she always felt like the odd one out. Her single friends were either bitter about men or so focused on their careers that romance seemed like a foreign concept. That's when Tessa, home for Christmas break during her junior year, sat her mother down for one of those conversations that changes everything. "Mom," Tessa said, curled up on the couch with a mug of hot chocolate, "when was the last time you did something just for you? Something that made you happy?" Monica had laughed, the kind of laugh that's more sad than funny. "Honey, I am happy. I have my job. I have you. You have a life built entirely around taking care of other people," Tessa interrupted gently. "But what about taking care of yourself? What about companionship? What about, I don't know, dating?" The word hung in the air between them like something foreign and slightly dangerous. "Dating?" Monica had repeated, as if Tessa had suggested skydiving or learning to speak Mandarin. "Tessa, I'm 54 years old. I haven't been on a date since 1987. I wouldn't even know where to start." That's when Tessa pulled out her phone and started showing Monica something that would change both their lives forever: dating apps. "Mom, this is how people meet now. It's not scary. It's not weird. It's just normal. You create a profile, you talk to people, you see if there's connection. What's the worst that could happen?" Looking back, that question, "what's the worst that could happen?" would prove to be tragically ironic. But in that moment, sitting in their warm living room with Christmas lights twinkling and her daughter's encouraging smile, Monica felt something she hadn't experienced in years: possibility. "I don't know, sweetheart. What would I even say about myself? What would I put in a profile?" Tessa's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that only comes from a child who wants to see their parent happy. "We'll figure it out together. We'll make you a profile that shows how amazing you are, how smart, how kind, how much love you have to give." Over the next few hours, they crafted what seemed like the perfect dating profile for Monica Evans. A widow, a teacher, a mother who was ready to open her heart again after years of focusing solely on grief and responsibility. They chose photos that showed Monica's warm smile, her intelligence, her zest for life. They wrote a bio that was honest about her past, but hopeful about her future. They laughed together as they uploaded it to Tinder, Bumble, and Match.com. "This is going to be great, Mom," Tessa said as she headed back to school a few days later. "Just remember, be yourself, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to say no if something doesn't feel right." Monica nodded, excited and nervous and hopeful all at once. Neither of them could have predicted that within 6 months, those dating apps would lead Monica to the most sophisticated con artist she'd ever encountered, and that her daughter's determination to protect her would expose an international criminal network that had been destroying lives across 4 different countries. The story of what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about online romance, family loyalty, and what it really means to save someone you love. Monica's first few weeks on dating apps were exactly what you'd expect for someone who hadn't dated in decades: awkward, exhausting, and occasionally hilarious. She went through what Tessa laughingly called swipe fatigue, endless profiles of men holding fish, posing with motorcycles they probably didn't own, or writing bios that consisted entirely of height requirements and come-to-coffee dates weren't much better. There was Gary, who spent 2 hours explaining why his divorce wasn't his fault. There was Robert, who showed up 20 minutes late and immediately started critiquing the cafe's Wi-Fi speed. There was Dennis, who seemed nice enough until he casually mentioned that he was still technically married but working on it. After 3 weeks of disappointing encounters, Monica was ready to delete the apps and accept that maybe online dating wasn't for her. She was 54. After all, maybe she'd missed her window for romance. Plaints about their ex-wives. That's exactly when Elias Lark's profile appeared on her screen. The moment Monica saw his photo, everything changed. This wasn't another middle-aged man in a fishing vest or holding a beer at a sports bar. This was someone who looked like he'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. The main photo showed a man with salt and pepper hair, brilliant blue eyes, and a smile that seemed to light up the entire screen. He was wearing what was obviously an expensive suit, standing on the deck of a yacht with crystal blue water stretching to the horizon behind him. His bio was refreshingly simple: Elias Lark, entrepreneur, traveler, ready to share life's adventures with someone special. No complaints about ex-wives. No fish photos. No desperate attempt at humor. Just confidence, success, and the promise of excitement. Monica stared at his profile for a full 5 minutes, convinced that someone like this couldn't possibly be interested in a small-town teacher from Oregon. Men who looked like Elias Lark dated supermodels and socialites, not widowed English instructors who shopped at Target and drove a 7-year-old Honda. She was about to swipe left when her phone buzzed with a notification. Elias Lark has sent you a message. He had messaged her first. Monica's hands were actually shaking as she opened the message. "Monica, your profile caught my attention immediately. There's something about your smile that suggests both wisdom and adventure. I'd love to know more about the woman behind those intelligent eyes." She read it 3 times, then screenshot it to send to Tessa, who responded immediately with a string of fire emojis and MOM. "He sounds amazing." Monica spent 45 minutes crafting her response, deleting and rewriting it until she settled on something that felt authentic but not too eager. "Thank you, Elias. I have to admit, your message is the most thoughtful one I've received. I'd love to learn more about your adventures." What happened next was like something out of a romantic movie. Elias didn't just message her back. He sent her a virtual bouquet of roses through the app, along with a note that read, "For a woman who deserves to be celebrated every day." Their conversations quickly evolved from simple messages to long, deep exchanges that stretched late into the evening. Elias had a way of asking questions that made Monica feel truly seen for the first time in years. He wanted to know about her teaching, her relationship with Tessa, her dreams for the future. He remembered details from previous conversations and referenced them days later. He sent her poetry, not cheesy internet poems, but beautiful verses that seemed chosen specifically for her. "I can't believe I'm saying this," Monica confessed to Tessa during one of their weekly phone calls, "but I think I'm falling for someone I've never met in person." Tell me everything, Tessa demanded, and Monica found herself gushing about Elias like a teenager with her first crush. She told Tessa about his business ventures. He claimed to split his time between Miami and Monaco, investing in renewable energy startups that were revolutionizing clean technology. He spoke passionately about his work, about creating a better world through innovation and smart investing. He's not just successful, Monica explained. He's making a difference. He told me about the solar project in rural Africa that's bringing electricity to villages for the first time. Can you imagine being part of something like that? The photos he sent were breathtaking. Elias at charity galas, shaking hands with people who looked important. Elias standing beside sleek sports cars that probably cost more than Monica's annual salary. Elias in what appeared to be penthouse apartments with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking glittering city skylines. But what impressed Monica most was how he included her in his world, even from a distance. He started sending good morning texts with sunrise photos from whatever exotic location he claimed to be visiting. He'd call her during his lunch breaks to hear about her day teaching. He even sent a sweet note to Tessa through Monica, congratulating her on making the dean's list and encouraging her studies. He wants to meet you when you're home for spring break, Monica told Tessa, practically glowing with happiness. He says anyone who raised such an accomplished daughter must be extraordinary herself. For the first time since her husband's death, Monica felt truly alive. She started paying more attention to her appearance, bought new clothes, even considered highlights for her hair. Her colleagues at the community college noticed the change immediately. "You're glowing, Monica," her friend Janet said over lunch. "What's your secret?" "I think I'm in love," Monica admitted, and saying the words out loud made them feel real and wonderful and terrifying all at once. The video calls were perhaps the most convincing part of Elias's performance. He would call her from what appeared to be luxury hotel suites or upscale restaurants, always impeccably dressed, always charming and attentive. The video quality wasn't perfect. There were occasional glitches, moments when the image would freeze or blur, but that seemed normal for international calls. What mattered was that she could see his face, hear his voice, feel the connection between them growing stronger with each conversation. "I wish I could be there with you right now," he would tell her, and Monica's heart would flutter like she was 25 again. But there were small things that should have been warning signs, details that would later seem obvious, but were easy to dismiss when wrapped in such overwhelming romance. Their planned in-person meetings were always postponed at the last minute. A business emergency in Dubai, a family crisis in Monaco, a sudden opportunity that couldn't be missed in Singapore. "I'm so sorry, darling," he would say, his disappointment seeming genuine. "I know how much we both want to meet, but this deal could fund our solar project for the next 5 years. Surely you understand." And Monica did understand. She was proud of being with someone so important, so in demand, so committed to making the world better. The postponed meetings were disappointing, but they proved how successful and dedicated he was. His request for privacy seemed reasonable too. "Don't mention our relationship on social media yet." He was a public figure, and privacy was important for both their safety. "Don't try to look him up online." His business required discretion, and too much attention could jam Monica was so swept up in excitement of being chosen by someone so extraordinary that she ignored the voice in the back of her mind that whispered questions she didn't want to answer. Why were his photos always so formal, so perfect, so oddly impersonal? Why had she never seen him in casual clothes or candid moments? Why did his stories about his business ventures sound so vague when pressed for details? But Monica's heart was too open, too hungry for connection, too desperate to believe that good things could still happen to her, to listen to doubt. She was falling in love with Elias Lark, and nothing else seemed to matter. E.O. Pardai's sensitive negotiations. 6 beautiful weeks. Monica lived in what felt like a romantic fairy tale. Every morning brought sweet messages from Elias. Every evening brought long conversations that made her feel more connected to another human being than she had since her husband died. She started each day checking her phone with the excitement of a teenager, eager to see what thoughtful surprise Elias had sent. A photo of a sunset from Monaco with the caption, "Thinking of you as another beautiful day ends." a link to an article about educational reform with a note saying, "This reminded me of your passion for teaching." A voice message recorded during his morning coffee, telling her how much he was looking forward to their planned weekend together. Monica had never felt so cherished, so valued, so absolutely adored. Her friends were thrilled for her. Janet from the English department kept asking for updates about Mr. Wonderful as she'd started calling him. Monica's neighbor, Carol, joked that she hadn't seen Monica smile this much since before her husband's illness. Even Tessa, calling from college every few days, could hear the happiness in her mother's voice. "Mom, you sound like yourself again," she said during one call. "Like the person you were before Dad got sick. I'm so happy for you." Everything was perfect, which should have been the first warning sign. But Monica was too intoxicated by love to notice that perfection doesn't exist in real relationships, only in carefully constructed fantasies. The shift began on a rainy Friday in March, when Monica was grading essays in her living room and looking forward to Elias's usual evening call. When her phone rang an hour earlier than expected, she answered with a smile. "You're early tonight," she said, settling into her favorite chair. "I was just thinking about you." But something in Elias's voice was different. The usual warmth was replaced by stress, frustration, and something that sounded like genuine panic. "Monica, darling, I'm so sorry to call you like this, but I'm in trouble. Real trouble." Monica's heart immediately jumped to her throat. "What's wrong? Are you hurt? Are you safe?" "I'm safe, but God, I don't even know how to explain this. You know the renewable energy project I've been working on? The one in Morocco that could bring clean electricity to 500,000 people." Monica did remember. Elias had talked passionately about this project for weeks, how it would revolutionize energy access across North Africa, how it represented everything he believed in about using business to make the world better. "Of course. You said it was the most important work of your career." "It is," Elias continued, his voice tight with emotion. "But the Moroccan government has frozen all my business accounts pending some bureaucratic review. They're claiming there are irregularities in the paperwork, but it's clearly political. My local partner warned me this might happen. There are people in the government who profit from the current energy monopolies." Monica felt her chest tighten with sympathy and worry. "Oh, Elias, that's terrible. How long will the review take?" "That's just it. Nobody knows. It could be weeks, months. And meanwhile, all my assets are locked up. I can't access my accounts in Monaco. I can't touch my investments in Miami. Everything is connected through the Moroccan project." "I'm so sorry," Monica said, genuinely heartbroken for him. "You've worked so hard on this. All those people who would have benefited. The worst part is that I know exactly how to fix it," Elias continued. "My lawyer in Casablanca says we need $10,000 immediately to file the proper appeals and grease the right wheels. It's not even about the money. It's about having liquid cash available right now, today, before the weekend." Monica was quiet for a moment, processing what he'd told her. "Can't you borrow against your other investments? Surely someone with your business connections." "That's what I thought too," Elias said, and she could hear him pacing. "But everything is so interconnected. The banks won't lend against frozen assets, and all my usual contacts are treating this situation like I have some kind of contagious disease. Nobody wants to risk getting involved in an international banking dispute." There was a long pause, and Monica could hear the weight of his desperation through the phone. "Monica, I hate to even ask this, but do you have access to $10,000? I know it's a lot of money, and I know we haven't met in person yet, but I'm literally out of options. I can have it back to you within the week, with interest. As soon as this bureaucratic nightmare is resolved, I'll have access to millions again." The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Monica's practical mind immediately started racing. $10,000 was most of her emergency savings, money she'd carefully set aside from her teacher's salary over years of careful budgeting. It represented security, protection against unexpected car repairs or medical bills, or any of the financial emergencies that terrified single mothers. But her heart was telling her something different. Here was a man she loved, the person who had brought joy back into her life, facing a crisis that could destroy everything he'd worked for. How could she stand by and do nothing when she had the power to help? Have you ever been asked to help someone you love financially? Have you ever felt that terrible pressure between protecting yourself and protecting someone else's dreams? Comment below about how you handled the pressure, because what Monica decided next would change everything. I need to think about this, Monica said carefully. It's a lot of money, Elias. Of course, he replied immediately. I understand completely. I'm sorry I even asked. It's just that you're the only person in my life right now who isn't connected to the business world, who wouldn't be affected by this political mess. But I should never have put this burden on you. His consideration only made Monica feel worse. Here she was, hesitating to help the man she claimed to love when he was facing the biggest crisis of his career. Tell me more about the legal process, she said. How exactly would the money help? For the next 20 minutes, Elias explained the complex web of Moroccan bureaucracy, the appeals process, the payments that needed to be made to various officials and lawyers. It all sounded legitimate, matching details he'd shared about his business operations over the past month and a half. More importantly, his story aligned perfectly with news reports Monica had read about international business complications in North Africa. The political instability, the corruption, the way foreign investors could find themselves trapped by shifting government policies. It all made sense. If I send you this money, Monica said slowly, how quickly can you get it back to me? Within a week, Elias promised. Monica, I swear to you on everything I hold dear, you'll have your money back with 15% interest the moment this is resolved. And more than that, as soon as I can travel again, I'm flying straight to Oregon. We'll take that trip to Paris I've been promising you. First class, best hotels, everything we've dreamed about. Monica closed her eyes and made the decision that would haunt her for months. Okay, she said quietly. I'll help you. The relief in Elias's voice was overwhelming. Monica, I love you so much. You're saving my life, my career, everything that matters to me. I promise you won't regret this. But as Monica hung up and started the process of wiring $10,000 to a bank account in Morocco, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a question she didn't want to acknowledge. If Elias was really as wealthy and well-connected as he claimed, why was she a small-town teacher, his only option for financial help? The answer to that question would soon become devastatingly clear. The wire transfer went through on a Saturday morning. Monica stood in the bank, signing forms that would send $10,000 to an account in Casablanca, Morocco, and try to ignore the anxious flutter in her stomach. International wire transfers can take 24 to 48 hours to process, the bank teller explained. You should receive confirmation once the funds are received on the other end. Monica nodded, clutching the receipt like it was a lifeline. She'd done the right thing. She'd helped the man she loved during his darkest hour. Soon this would all be resolved, and they'd laugh about it during their romantic weekend in Paris. But the confirmation never came. When Monica called Elias that evening, he assured her that international banking was always slow, especially when dealing with government complications. These things take time, darling. I know it's frustrating, but we just have to be patient. By Tuesday, Monica was checking her bank account obsessively, expecting to see the money returned with interest as promised. Instead, her phone rang with another crisis. Monica, I'm so sorry to bother you again, Elias said, his voice strained with exhaustion. The legal situation has gotten more complicated. My lawyer needs another $5,000 for additional filing fees and to expedite the appeals process. Monica felt something cold settle in her stomach. Another $5,000? But you said the $10,000 would handle everything. I thought it would, Elias replied, frustration evident in his voice. But the Moroccan officials keep adding new requirements. It's like they're deliberately trying to bleed us dry. My lawyer says this is common in these political situations. They keep moving the goalposts until you either pay up or give up. Elias, I don't have another $5,000 readily available. The $10,000 was most of my emergency savings. I know, and I hate myself for even asking. But, Monica, we're so close to resolving this. If we don't move forward now, I could lose everything, the project, the investments, years of work. And your 10,000 would be lost too, frozen in the bureaucratic mess. That last part hit Monica like a physical blow. Not only was Elias asking for more money, but he was suggesting that her original investment was at risk if she didn't continue funding his legal battles. "Let me think about it," Monica said weakly. "Of course. But Monica, time is critical here. Every day we delay gives the government more leverage to freeze additional assets." After hanging up, Monica sat in her living room staring at the phone, feeling trapped and confused and increasingly alone. The fairy tale romance was starting to feel like a nightmare, but she was too deep into the emotional investment to see clearly. That's when Tessa called for their weekly check-in. "Hi, Mom. How are things with Mr. Wonderful?" Monica tried to keep her voice light, but Tessa had always been able to read her emotions, even over the phone. "Everything's fine, honey. Just some business complications with Elias's work." "What kind of complications?" Tessa asked, immediately alert to her mother's tone. Monica found herself sharing more than she'd intended. The frozen accounts, the legal fees, the additional money Elias needed. She tried to present it as a temporary inconvenience, but even as she spoke, she could hear how it sounded. Tessa was quiet for a long moment after Monica finished explaining. "Mom," she said carefully, "have you met this man in person yet?" "Not yet, but we're planning." "And you've sent him $10,000? "I helped him with a business emergency. He's going to pay it back with interest." "Mom." Tessa's voice had changed from concern to something sharper, more urgent. "This sounds like a scam." Monica felt defensive immediately. "Tessa, you don't understand. Elias isn't some random person I met online. We've been talking for 2 months. I know him." "You know what he's told you about himself," Tessa corrected. "But what do you actually know? Have you verified any of his claims?" "I've seen photos of his life. Talked to him on video calls." "Photos can be stolen from anywhere, Mom. Video calls can be manipulated. Have you met any of his friends? His family? His business associates?" Monica realized she couldn't answer any of those questions positively. "Tessa, I appreciate your concern, but I'm a grown woman. I can make my own decisions about my relationships." "You're absolutely right," Tessa said, her voice softening. "But, Mom, I love you too much to watch you get hurt. Can you please not send any more money until I get home for spring break? That's only 3 weeks away." "Why?" "Because I want to help you research him. If he's legitimate, we'll find evidence. If he's not..." Tessa paused. "Then we'll deal with that together." What Tessa didn't tell her mother was that she'd already started researching. As a junior at Oregon State studying computer science, Tessa had been exposed to extensive digital literacy training. Her campus had regular seminars about online safety, romance scams, and catfishing. She'd helped friends identify fake social media profiles and had even assisted campus security in tracking down someone who'd been harassed the moment Monica described sending money to someone she'd never met. Every warning bell in Tessa's head started ringing. After hanging up with her mother, Tessa opened her laptop and began what would become the most important research project of her life. She started with the photos Monica had shared of Elias. Using reverse image search tools she'd learned about in her digital forensics class, Tessa began tracing the origins of every image her mother had received. The first photo, Elias on the yacht, returned dozens of results across multiple websites. The image had been used on luxury travel blogs, yacht rental advertisements, and stock photo sites. None of them mentioned anyone named Elias Lark. The second photo, Elias in a tuxedo at what appeared to be a charity gala, led even more disturbing results. The same image appeared on dating profiles across 6 different platforms, each time with a different name: Marcus Sterling, David Rothschild, Alexander Pemberton. Tessa's hands were shaking as she continued her search. ING students through anonymous accounts. The penthouse photos had been lifted from real estate listings in Dubai and Singapore. The sports car images came from luxury car dealership websites. Even the sunrise photos Elias had been sending as good morning messages were stock images from photography sites. But the most damning evidence came when Tessa searched for Elias Lark Entrepreneur Renewable Energy. Instead of finding business articles or company websites, she found something that made her blood run cold, a blog post titled Romance Scammer Alert: The Many Faces of the International Entrepreneur. The blog detailed a sophisticated romance scam operation that had been targeting middle-aged women across North America and Europe. The scammer used multiple identities, but the pattern was always the same. Wealthy entrepreneur with international business interests, claims of frozen assets requiring emergency financial assistance, promises of luxury travel, and romantic meetings that never materialized. The blog included screenshots of dozens of dating profiles, all using the same photos Monica had shown her, all claiming to be different wealthy businessmen. What would you do if you discovered your parent was being scammed by an international criminal? Would you have the courage to show them evidence that would completely shatter their world? Because what Tessa found next was even more devastating. She found testimonials from other victims, women from Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, and across the United States. All of them had fallen for the same charming entrepreneur. All of them had sent money to help with various business emergencies. All of them had lost their savings and their hearts to the same sophisticated con artist. The stories were heartbreakingly similar to her mother's experience. The gradual building of trust, the romantic attention that felt too good to be true, the sudden financial crisis that required immediate help, the escalating requests for more money. One woman from Toronto had lost $50,000. A widow from Manchester had emptied her retirement account, sending $80,000 to help Elias with legal troubles. A teacher from Phoenix, the similarity to her mother's profession made Tessa physically ill, had borrowed against her house to send $35,000. All of them had been left financially and emotionally devastated when Elias disappeared after extracting as much money as possible. But the worst part was reading about the psychological manipulation tactics the scammer used. How he made each woman feel special and chosen. How he isolated them from friends and family who might ask uncomfortable questions. How he created a sense of urgency and emergency that bypassed rational thinking. It was a textbook case of what experts called romance fraud, one of the fastest-growing crimes in the world, targeting vulnerable people seeking genuine connection and exploiting their capacity for love and trust. Tessa spent the entire night documenting everything she found. Screenshots of the fake profiles, links to victim testimonials, evidence that every single detail of Elias Lark's life was stolen from other sources. By morning, she had compiled a comprehensive file proving that her mother's perfect romance was actually an elaborate criminal enterprise designed to exploit her loneliness and drain her finances. Now came the hardest part, figuring out how to tell her mother that the man she'd fallen in love with didn't exist and that she was just the latest victim in an international crime spree. Tessa knew that showing Monica this evidence would break her heart, but she also knew that not showing it would break her financially and possibly destroy her ability to ever trust or love again. Sometimes love means delivering the truth that will hurt someone in the short term to save them from devastation in the long term. And Tessa loved her mother too much to let this continue for even one more day. Tessa didn't sleep the night she discovered the truth about Elias Lark. She sat at her desk in her dorm room until sunrise, staring at the overwhelming evidence she compiled, trying to find the courage to destroy her mother's happiness. By 6 a.m., she'd made her decision. She couldn't protect Monica from heartbreak, but she could protect her from financial ruin. Tessa called in sick to her morning classes, bought a bus ticket home, and spent the 3-hour journey from Corvallis to Portland rehearsing what she would say. How do you tell someone that the person they love doesn't exist? How do you prove that every romantic moment has been a calculated lie? She arrived at Monica's house just after 2 p.m., using her key to let herself in. Monica was in the kitchen grading papers, and her face lit up with surprise and joy when she saw her daughter. "Tessa, what are you doing here? You didn't tell me you were coming home." "Hi, Mom," Tessa said, her voice carefully controlled. "We need to talk." Something in Tessa's tone made Monica set down her red pen and give her daughter her full attention. "Is everything okay? Are you in trouble at school?" "I'm not in trouble, Mom, but I think you might be." Tessa pulled out her laptop and set it on the kitchen table. "I want you to look at something. If this is about Elias again, It is about Elias. And Mom, I need you to look at this with an open mind, okay? I know this is going to be hard to hear. Monica crossed her arms, immediately defensive. Tessa, I appreciate your concern, but... Mom, please. Tessa opened her laptop to the first screenshot. Just look. The screen showed Elias's yacht photo alongside identical images from luxury travel websites and stock photography sites. These are the same photos, Tessa said gently. The picture he sent you of himself on the yacht, it's been used on dozens of websites for years. It's not his yacht, Mom. It's not even his photo. Monica stared at the screen, her face pale. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe those websites stole his photo. Tessa clicked to the next screen. Here's the photo of him at the charity gala. This time, the evidence was even more damning. The same image appeared across multiple dating sites with different names. Marcus Sterling in Vancouver, David Rothschild in London, Alexander Pemberton in Sydney. Same photo, different names, different cities, Tessa said softly. Mom, this isn't a coincidence. Monica was silent, staring at the screen with growing horror. Tessa continued through her evidence methodically. The penthouse photos from real estate listings, the sports car images from dealership websites, the sunrise photos from stock photography sites. Every single photo he sent you was stolen from somewhere else, Tessa said. He's not in Miami or Monaco. He's not a successful entrepreneur. He's a scammer using other people's lives to create a fake identity. That's impossible, Monica whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Mom, there's more. Tessa pulled up the blog post about romance scam victims. Other women have fallen for the exact same person. Same name, same photos, same story about frozen assets. As Tessa read the testimonials aloud, Monica's face crumbled. The Toronto woman who'd lost $50,000. The Manchester widow who'd emptied her retirement account. The Phoenix teacher who'd mortgaged her house. He's done this before, Monica said, her voice barely audible. To all these women. And he's doing it to you right now, Tessa said gently. Mom, the money you sent to Morocco, it didn't go to any lawyer. It went straight into the scammer's pocket. Monica stood up abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at her garden without seeing it. The silence stretched between them for what felt like hours. When she finally turned around, tears were streaming down her face. I'm such an idiot, she whispered. No, Tessa said firmly, standing to hug her mother. You're not an idiot. You're someone who was targeted by a professional criminal. These people are experts at psychological manipulation. They study what makes people vulnerable and they exploit it. But all the signs were there, Monica said, sobbing into her daughter's shoulder. The postponed meetings, the vague business details, the request for privacy. How could I have been so blind? Because you want to believe, Tessa said. Because you deserve to find love again, and he took advantage of that hope. This isn't your fault, Mom. But Monica pulled away, anger beginning to replace devastation. I need to call him. I need to hear him admit it. Mom, I don't think. I need to hear it from him, Tessa. Monica picked up her phone with trembling hands and dialed the number she called so many times over the past 2 months. Tessa stood beside her, ready to provide support for whatever happened next. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a mechanical voice. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Monica tried again, thinking she'd misdialed. Same message. She tried the alternate number Elias had given her for emergencies. Disconnected. The reality hit her like a physical blow. Not only was Elias a fake, but he'd vanished completely now that his scam had been exposed. He's gone, Monica said, staring at her phone. Just gone. That evening was one of the darkest of Monica's life. She sat on her couch, surrounded by printed screenshots and evidence of her own gullibility, trying to process the magnitude of what happened to her. The financial loss was devastating enough. $10,000 represented months of careful saving, money she planned to use for a new roof or unexpected medical bills. But the emotional betrayal was infinitely worse. Every romantic conversation had been a lie. Every sweet message had been calculated manipulation. Every moment of feeling cherished and special had been part of an elaborate performance designed to extract her money. How many other women is he talking to right now? Monica asked Tessa. How many other people are falling for the same lies? I don't know, Mom, but that's not your responsibility. Isn't it, though? Monica said, a new determination entering her voice. If I stay silent, if I hide what happened to me, other women are going to go through the same thing. Tessa looked at her mother with growing respect. Even in the depths of humiliation and heartbreak, Monica was thinking about protecting others. What do you want to do? I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else, Monica said firmly. I want to stop him. That night, instead of wallowing in self-pity, Monica and Tessa began planning their counterattack. They started by reporting every fake profile they'd found to the dating platforms. Most sites had policies against romance scammers, but enforcement was inconsistent. Still, each report created a digital paper trail. They filed a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, providing detailed documentation of the scam, including financial records, photos, and communication logs. But most importantly, Monica made the decision to reach out to other victims. Using the contact information from the blog posts and online forums, Monica began connecting with women who'd been targeted by the same scammer. The conversations were painful, but also healing. I felt so ashamed, said Karen from Toronto during their first phone call. Like I should have known better. That's exactly how I felt, Monica replied. But talking to you, hearing that he used the exact same tactics, it's not our fault. We weren't stupid. We were targeted by a professional criminal. Within a week, Monica had connected with 12 other victims across 3 countries. They formed a private support group, sharing not only their experiences, but also their evidence against the scammer. The collective documentation they assembled was comprehensive. Financial records, communication logs, technical data about IP addresses and phone numbers, testimonials from victims across multiple countries. But Monica wasn't finished. Her next decision would transform her from victim to advocate and ultimately help bring international attention to the growing epidemic of romance fraud. I want to go public, she told Tessa during dinner one evening. I want to tell our stories so other people understand what these scammers are capable of. Are you sure, Mom? Once it's out there, you can't take it back. People will know what happened. Monica thought about all the women she'd spoken with, all the shame and isolation they'd experienced, all the money and trust that had been stolen from them. Good, she said finally. People should know, because the only way to stop these criminals is to expose how they operate. And if sharing my story saves even one person from going through what we went through, then it's worth any embarrassment. What happened next would turn Monica's personal nightmare into a national conversation about online safety and the devastating impact of romance fraud. Monica's decision to go public wasn't made lightly. She spent sleepless nights worrying about the judgment she might face, the whispers from colleagues, the pity from friends who would know she'd been fooled so completely. But every time doubt crept in, she thought about the 12 women she connected with through their shared trauma. Women like Margaret from Dublin, who'd lost her late husband's life insurance payout. Like Susan from Calgary, who borrowed against her children's college funds. Like Patricia from Melbourne, who'd refinance her home to send money to the same fake businessman. These weren't naive or unintelligent women. They were teachers, nurses, accountants, and retirees. They were mothers and grandmothers who had simply been seeking companionship after loss or divorce. They were Monica in different cities with different names. But the Sam, someone has to speak up, Monica told Tessa one evening as they prepared her media strategy. These criminals count on our shame and silence. They know we're too embarrassed to report them, too humiliated to warn others. Tessa had suggested reaching out to a podcaster named Jake Morrison, who hosted Digital Predators, a show that exposed online scams and cybercriminals. His episodes regularly reached hundreds of thousands of listeners, and he had a reputation for treating victims with respect rather than judgment. When Monica called Jake's production company, she expected to leave a voicemail and wait weeks for a response. Instead, Jake himself called her back within hours. Mrs. Evans, he said, his voice warm and professional. I've been tracking the Elias Lark scammer for months. Your story could be the key to finally exposing the full scope of this operation. Other people have contacted you about him. Dozens, Jake replied grimly. But most victims are too traumatized or ashamed to go on record. If you're willing to share your experience publicly with documentation, it can help law enforcement connect the dots across international borders. Broken hearts and empty bank accounts. Monica's hands were shaking when she agreed to be interviewed for the podcast, but Tessa sat beside her during the recording, squeezing her hand whenever the questions became difficult. The episode, titled The Entrepreneur Who Never Existed, was released 3 weeks later and immediately went viral. Monica's story resonated with listeners not just because of the financial loss, but because of how articulately she described the psychological manipulation involved in romance fraud. "He didn't just steal my money," Monica said during the interview. "He stole my ability to trust my own judgment. He made me question whether I deserved love, whether I was foolish for believing someone could care about me. That's the real crime, not just the financial theft, but the emotional destruction." The podcast episode was downloaded over 2 million times in the first month. Comments poured in from listeners sharing their own experiences with romance scammers, and more importantly, from people who recognized the red flags and avoided becoming victims themselves. But Monica's advocacy was just beginning. Have you ever turned a painful experience into a way to help others? Have you found the courage to be vulnerable publicly in order to protect people you've never met? Monica's decision to go public ended up saving countless other women from the same devastating fate. Within weeks of the podcast release, Monica was fielding interview requests from news organizations across the country. She appeared on morning shows, evening news programs, and documentary features about online dating safety. Each interview was emotionally exhausting, requiring Monica to relive her humiliation and heartbreak for public consumption. But the feedback made it worthwhile. "Your story saved my mother," read one email from a woman in Texas. "She was talking to someone who sounded exactly like your Elias, and your interview helped me show her the warning signs. I was about to send money to a man I met online," wrote another listener from Florida. "Hearing your experience stopped me from making the same mistake." But perhaps the most significant impact came when Monica's story caught the attention of federal investigators. Agent Sarah Chun from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center contacted Monica directly after hearing the podcast. "Mrs. Evans, the documentation you and your daughter compiled is some of the most comprehensive evidence we've seen in a romance fraud case. Would you be willing to cooperate with our investigation?" Monica didn't hesitate. "What do you need me to do?" What followed was months of intensive cooperation with law enforcement agencies across 4 countries. The network of victims Monica had connected with proved invaluable to investigators, providing a clear pattern of criminal activity that crossed international borders. The scammer wasn't operating alone. Agent Chin explained that Elias Lark was part of a sophisticated criminal organization based in West Africa, with accomplices in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. They operated hundreds of fake profiles across dozens of dating platforms, targeting vulnerable individuals with carefully crafted personas designed to exploit specific psychological vulnerabilities. The operation was staggeringly profitable. Conservative estimates suggested the network had stolen over $50 million from victims across 6 continents. The renewable energy businessman was just one character. Agent Chin explained to Monica during one of their meetings. They also operate as military officers deployed overseas, oil rig workers in remote locations, doctors working for international aid organizations. Any profession that would explain why they can't meet in person, but would appeal to victims' values and emotions. The technical aspects of tracking the criminals were complex, involving cryptocurrency transactions, international banking regulations, and cooperation between multiple law enforcement agencies. But Monica's comprehensive documentation provided crucial evidence that helped investigators trace the money flow and identify key players in the organization. The breakthrough came when digital forensics experts managed to track the IP addresses associated with the fake profiles back to a specific location in Lagos, Nigeria. International cooperation led to raids that resulted in the arrest of 12 individuals, including the mastermind who had been posing as Elias Lark. Monica was asked to provide victim impact testimony via video conference for the legal proceedings. Sitting in a federal building in Portland, looking at a screen showing a courtroom in Lagos, she faced a man who had stolen not just her money, but months of her emotional well-being. He looked nothing like the photos she'd fallen in love with. He was younger than she'd expected, ordinary in a way that made his crimes seem even more calculating and cold. "You didn't just steal money from me," Monica said, reading from a prepared statement while Tessa sat beside her for support. "You stole my trust, my hope, my belief that good things could happen to me again after loss. You took advantage of my grief and loneliness to fund your criminal lifestyle." The defendant showed no emotion during her testimony, but Monica felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. The legal proceedings resulted in convictions for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. While the sentences varied by jurisdiction, the mastermind received 15 years in federal prison. More importantly, the investigation led to the shutdown of the entire network and the identification of over 800 victims worldwide. Law enforcement agencies issued a joint statement crediting Monica and her daughter's investigation with providing crucial evidence that made the international cooperation possible. Without Mrs. Evans' courage in coming forward and the comprehensive documentation she provided, the statement read, "This criminal network would still be operating and victimizing innocent people seeking companionship online." But for Monica, the real victory wasn't the criminal convictions or the media attention. It was the hundreds of emails she received from people who'd been protected by her willingness to share her story, and the growing community of survivors who no longer had to face their trauma alone. She had transformed from victim to advocate, from someone who'd been exploited to someone who was protecting others. And she was just getting started. The months following the criminal convictions were both healing and transformative for Monica. The media attention had died down, the legal proceedings had concluded, and she found herself returning to quiet rhythms of her Oregon life. But everything had changed. She was no longer the same woman who had innocently swiped through dating profiles 18 months earlier. The experience had left her wiser, more cautious, but surprisingly not bitter. Instead of closing her heart to the possibility of love, Monica had learned to approach relationships with healthy bound. "I refuse to let him steal my future along with my past," Monica told her therapist during one of their sessions. She'd started counseling not because she was broken, but because she wanted to process her trauma in healthy ways and understand how to trust again without becoming paranoideries and hard-earned wisdom. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in financial abuse and fraud recovery, helped Monica understand that her experience was part of a growing epidemic targeting older adults, particularly women, who were navigating life transitions like divorce or widowhood. "You weren't targeted randomly," Dr. Martinez explained. "These criminals study demographic data and psychological profiles. They know that women in your situation, intelligent, caring, recently bereaved, are often lonely and grateful for attention. That's not a character flaw. That's human nature." The therapy sessions helped Monica reframe her experience from personal failure to criminal victimization. She learned that shame was a tool scammers relied on to silence their victims, and that speaking out had been an act of courage, not an admission of stupidity. But perhaps the most healing aspect of Monica's recovery was watching the impact her advocacy had on other people. Her story had sparked a national conversation about online dating safety that extended far beyond romance scams. Universities began incorporating digital literacy training into their curricula. Senior centers started offering workshops on internet safety. Dating platforms implemented better verification systems and red flag detection algorithms. The community of survivors Monica had helped create continued to grow and support each other. What had started as 12 women sharing their experiences had evolved into a formal support network with over 200 members across 3 countries. They called themselves Second Chances, not because they were looking for second chances at love, but because they were giving themselves second chances at trust, confidence, and emotional security after financial abuse. Monica became the unofficial coordinator of the group, helping new members navigate the reporting process, connect with law enforcement, and process their emotions without shame or self-blame. "You saved my life," wrote Maria from Phoenix, the teacher whose story had so closely paralleled Monica's own. "Not just financially, but emotionally. I was ready to give up on ever trusting anyone again, but seeing your strength helped me find my own." The work was emotionally demanding, but deeply fulfilling. Monica discovered that helping other survivors heal was helping her heal as well. But Monica's advocacy extended beyond support groups. She and Tessa began developing educational materials about romance fraud, creating presentations they could deliver to community groups, senior centers, and organizations that work with vulnerable populations. Their mother-daughter team became a powerful combination. Tessa provided the technical expertise about how scams operated in the digital age, while Monica shared the emotional reality of being targeted and the psychological tactics used by criminals. The most important thing to understand, Monica would tell audiences, is that these aren't random crimes of opportunity. Romance scammers are professional criminals who study human psychology and exploit our deepest needs for connection and love. Falling for their tactics doesn't make you gullible, it makes you human. Their presentations were requested by organizations across the Pacific Northwest and eventually nationwide. They spoke at AARP meetings, community colleges, libraries, and even testified before state legislative committees considering stronger consumer protection laws for online dating platforms. The financial impact of the scam had been significant. Monica never recovered the $10,000 she'd sent to Morocco, but she'd learned to view that loss differently. "That money bought me an education I couldn't have gotten any other way," she would tell people. "It taught me about digital literacy, psychological manipulation, and the importance of verification in relationships. Most importantly, it taught me that I'm stronger than I thought I was." Meanwhile, Monica's relationship with Tessa had evolved into something even deeper than the close bond they'd always shared. The experience had shown both women that their partnership could weather any crisis. "I've always been proud of my mom," Tessa said during a joint interview for a documentary about romance fraud. But watching her turn the worst experience of her life into a mission to protect other people, that's when I realized she was a hero. Tessa's own career path had been influenced by the experience as well. She changed her major from computer science to cybersecurity and digital forensics, with plans to specialize in financial crime investigation. "What happened to Mom opened my eyes to how vulnerable people are in the digital age," Tessa explained. "I want to use my technical skills to catch criminals and protect potential victims." After 2 years of advocacy work and healing, Monica made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. She was ready to try dating again. But this time, she approached romance with a completely different framework. She implemented strict verification protocols, video calls within the first week, in-person meetings within the first month, and absolutely no discussion of financial matters until after meeting face-to-face multiple times. She was upfront with potential partners about her experience with romance fraud, using it as a screening tool. Men who were understanding and supportive of her caution were worth pursuing. Those who seemed impatient with her boundaries or tried to rush intimacy were immediately eliminated. "I'm not looking for someone to rescue me or complete me," Monica explained to her friends. "I'm looking for someone to share experiences with. Someone who adds joy to a life that's already fulfilling." 6 months after she started dating again, Monica met David Chun, a retired librarian who had also been widowed several years earlier. Their first meeting was coffee at a busy cafe, with Tessa discreetly sitting at a nearby table for safety, a precaution David not only understood but respected. David had also done his research about romance scams after hearing Monica's story on the podcast, and he appreciated her caution rather than being offended by it. "I'd rather spend 6 months building trust slowly than 6 weeks building a fantasy quickly," he told Monica during one of their early conversations. Their relationship developed at a natural pace, built on shared interests, compatible values, and mutual respect rather than grand romantic gestures or promises of luxury travel. When David finally met Tessa officially, 6 months into their relationship, she gave him her approval, not because he was wealthy or exciting, but because he was kind, honest, and genuinely interested in Monica as a complete person rather than as a romantic ideal. "He asks about your students, your advocacy work, your friends," Tessa told her mother. "He wants to know who you really are, not who he wants you to be." Monica's story had come full circle. The woman who had been targeted for her loneliness and vulnerability had become someone whose life was rich with purpose, relationships, and the kind of authentic connection she'd been seeking all along. She had transformed from victim to survivor to advocate to teacher to, eventually, someone who had found genuine love, not despite her traumatic experience, but because of the wisdom and strength it had given her. Her journey proved that healing was possible, that trust could be rebuilt, and that the worst experiences in life could become the foundation for the most meaningful work and relationships that followed. 3 years after that devastating phone call, when Tessa first showed her mother the evidence about Elias Lark, Monica Evans stood at a podium addressing 500 people at the National Conference on Elder Financial Abuse. Beside her sat Tessa, now working as a digital forensics specialist for the FBI's Cybercrime Division, and David, the man who had shown Monica that authentic love was still possible after betrayal and heartbreak. When I first swiped right on a fake millionaire's profile, Monica began drawing laughter from an audience that understood the pain behind the humor. I thought I was looking for companionship. I had no idea I was about to get an education in human psychology, criminal justice, and my own inner strength. The audience included fraud investigators, victim advocates, policymakers, and fellow survivors. Monica's story had become a cornerstone case study in romance fraud prevention, but more than that, it had become a beacon of hope for people who thought their mistakes had disqualified them from happiness. The most important lesson I learned isn't about online dating safety, Monica continued. It's about the difference between shame and wisdom. Shame tells you that being victimized means you're stupid. Wisdom tells you that being victimized means you're human, and that your experience can protect others from the same harm. In the 3 years since her story went public, Monica had helped establish victim support networks in 12 states, testified before Congress about the need for stronger online consumer protections, and personally counseled over 300 romance fraud survivors. The Second Chances support network she'd helped create had grown into a registered nonprofit organization that provided resources, advocacy, and emotional support for financial abuse survivors worldwide. But perhaps most significantly, her advocacy had contributed to real policy changes. Dating platforms now required stronger identity verification. Financial institutions had implemented better monitoring systems for international wire transfers. Law enforcement agencies had developed specialized units for romance fraud investigation. 3 years ago, when Tessa sat me down and showed me that the man I loved didn't exist, I thought my life was over, Monica said, looking at her daughter with unmistakable pride. I thought I would never trust my own judgment again, never believe I deserved love again, never recover from the humiliation of being so completely fooled. But here's what I've learned. The worst thing that ever happened to me became the foundation for the most meaningful work of my life. The daughter who broke my heart to save my future became my closest partner in helping other families navigate the same crisis. And the caution I learned from being betrayed taught me how to recognize authentic love when it finally appeared. Monica's relationship with David had become a testament to the possibility of finding genuine connection after trauma. They'd been married for 8 months now, in a small ceremony attended by their combined families and dozens of friends from the survivor community they'd helped build. Their relationship served as a model for others learning to date again after financial abuse, built on transparency, mutual respect, and the understanding that trust was something to be earned through consistent actions rather than grand gestures. David knew my whole story before a third date, Monica told audiences. He understood my need for verification, respected my boundaries, and never once made me feel damaged or paranoid for being careful. That's how I knew he was different from every scammer who had tried to rush intimacy and avoid scrutiny. Tessa's career had flourished as well. Her work with the FBI had led to the investigation and prosecution of 17 major romance fraud networks, preventing an estimated $200 million in victim losses. Mom's experience taught me that cybercrime isn't just about technology, Tessa said during her portion of the presentation. It's about psychology, manipulation, and the exploitation of human needs for connection. The best way to fight it is with education, awareness, and the courage of survivors who are willing to share their stories. But beyond professional accomplishments and policy changes, Monica's story resonated with people because it demonstrated something fundamental about human resilience and the power of family love. The day Tessa showed me those screenshots, I felt like my world was ending. Monica reflected, but what actually ended was my willingness to be naive about human nature. What began was my education in how to protect myself and others from predators who exploit our capacity for love. The most beautiful part of this journey has been discovering that being suspicious of romance scams doesn't make you suspicious of genuine love. Being careful about financial requests doesn't make you ungenerous. Having boundaries doesn't make you closed off. In fact, all of these things make you a better partner to someone who deserves your trust. As Monica concluded her presentation, she offered the audience the same advice she gave to every survivor she counseled. Your experience with fraud doesn't disqualify you from love. It qualifies you to recognize the difference between manipulation and genuine affection. Your financial losses don't define your worth. They represent tuition paid for wisdom that can protect others. Your daughter's or son's intervention isn't betrayal. It's the deepest expression of love possible. And remember this, the criminals who target us count on our shame and silence. They succeed when we hide our experiences and blame ourselves for being human. They fail when we speak up, support each other, and transform our pain into protection for the next potential victim. If this story has opened your eyes to the sophisticated tactics of romance scammers, if it's shown you the importance of family protection and digital literacy, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Hammer Halo for more stories about turning life's worst moments into opportunities for growth and service to others. Share this with someone who needs to hear that being fooled by a professional criminal doesn't make them foolish. It makes them human. And that sometimes the person who saved you from disaster is the one who loves you enough to risk your anger to protect your future. Because in a world where criminals exploit our deepest needs for connection, we all need reminders that authentic love still exists, and that it's worth waiting for, fighting for, and protecting with boundaries that honor both our hopes and our hard-earned wisdom. Monica's story proves that sometimes a fake millionaire leads you to genuine treasure, not in a bank account, but in the strength you never knew you had, the relationships that prove unbreakable under pressure, and the purpose that emerges when you choose to transform your worst experience into someone else's salvation.